Big mistake. She publicly slapped the billionaire's black wife. Minutes later, she was begging for forgiveness. "How dare you speak to me that way? Do you have any idea who I am?" The sharp words sliced through the usual polite hush of Spago, Beverly Hills' famed fine dining restaurant. Instantly, every head turned toward the small table where Jessica Williams sat quietly in a simple yet elegant deep blue dress. Across from her stood Victoria Hartwell, a wealthy and well-known white socialite in Los Angeles, her face flushed with rage, finger stabbing the air toward Jessica with hostility and contempt. Jessica said nothing. She simply looked up at the woman towering over her, her calm eyes betraying the confusion and unease she felt inside. She had no idea what had triggered such fury, or why she was being targeted so viciously. "I will not tolerate being insulted by someone low-class, cheap, and utterly insignificant like you," Victoria all but shouted, her words dripping with disdain, unashamedly broadcasting her contempt to everyone present. Murmurs rippled across the restaurant. Guests whispered to one another, speculating who Jessica might be, and what a woman with such an ordinary appearance was doing in a place reserved for the ultra-rich. Curiosity gave way to tension as the air thickened around the confrontation. Jessica remained silent. She fought to steady her breathing, but inside, every word felt like a blade cutting deep into her dignity. Victoria's barbs weren't just insults, they were deliberate attempts to strip her of her self-worth. Her silence only enraged Victoria further. To a woman accustomed to deference and submission, Jessica's quiet composure felt like defiance. Each second without a reaction made Victoria feel more slighted, more humiliated. "Did you not hear me? Or do you not understand English?" she sneered, raising her voice so that everyone could hear. "Is this your first time in a place like this, and you don't even know how to behave properly?" Some diners shifted uncomfortably in their seats. A few looked ready to intervene, but no one moved. Perhaps they were too stunned, or perhaps they had grown too familiar with these displays of dominance among the elite. Jessica swallowed hard, her hands tightening beneath the table. From childhood, she had endured suspicious looks, whispered judgments, subtle prejudice, but never had she faced such open, brutal humiliation. "I'm sorry," she finally managed, her voice soft but steady. "I believe there's been some misunderstanding. I'm not bothering you. I'm simply waiting here for my husband to return." Victoria's laugh was cold, devoid of warmth, her piercing blue eyes narrowing. "Your husband? Really? Where is he then? Or is that just a story you tell yourself, trying to sneak into a world that will never accept you?" The room grew even quieter. Even the soft background music seemed to fade, as though the entire restaurant held its breath. Jessica felt the weight of every stare pressing down on her. She wanted to rise and leave, but something inside, her pride, her lifelong fight for her place, kept her rooted. "I ask you to stop insulting me," Jessica said, her tone stronger now. "I owe you no explanation. I have as much right to be here as you do." The words were too much for Victoria. Jessica's composure, her refusal to shrink, was intolerable. Fury overcame reason. Victoria's hand flew up, and with a sharp crack that echoed like a gunshot, she slapped Jessica across the face. Jessica froze, her cheek burning with the sting of the blow. Yet she did not cry, she did not scream. She simply placed her hand against her face, her eyes fixed ahead, unblinking. Around them, phones appeared, recording the shocking scene. Whispers and gasps filled the air, but still, no one dared step in. Victoria stood there, chest heaving, her expression triumphant as though she had claimed some twisted victory. But in that very instant the doors opened. A tall, commanding man in a charcoal gray suit entered, his presence immediately altering the atmosphere. Nathan Williams, billionaire tech mogul, and Jessica's husband. His eyes locked instantly on his wife, her face still marked by the violence she had endured. A deadly silence fell over the room as he strode forward with deliberate, powerful steps. When he spoke, his voice was low, but it reverberated with thunderous authority. "Who just laid a hand on my wife?" About 4 hours before that fateful slap echoed inside Spago, Beverly Hills, the late afternoon sun streamed gently through the wide glass windows of a refined Bel Air hillside mansion. Inside, the atmosphere was serene and calm, seemingly cut off from the glittering world beyond. Jessica Williams stood before a tall mirror in her dressing room, her fingers trailing lightly across the neatly hung dresses. Luxurious designer gowns rested quietly on their hangers, yet her eyes lingered on a simple deep blue dress, elegant, understated, and her longtime favorite. She touched the soft fabric gently, a sense of peace filling her heart. "This one, for sure," Jessica murmured with a small smile, carefully lifting the dress from the hanger. Minimalist yet refined, it perfectly matched her quiet and modest nature. Behind her, the sound of running water drifted from the bathroom. Nathan, her husband, was still showering. Jessica allowed herself to savor this calm moment, rare amid the pressures of life with a billionaire husband. At 28, Jessica embodied a natural, unpretentious beauty. She had no need for dazzling jewels or flamboyant gowns. Her soft black hair, expressive brown eyes, and warm, honey-toned skin gave her an enduring grace that no embellishment could surpass. As she fastened the zipper of her dress, Nathan emerged from the bathroom, a towel wrapped around his waist, another drying his hair. Nathan Williams, 35, was among the youngest billionaires in America, founder and CEO of Nexus Corp, one of the world's leading tech giants. Tall and athletic, with piercing blue eyes and a magnetic presence, he radiated confidence and power with the ease of someone used to commanding attention. But to Jessica, Nathan was simply her husband, gentle, attentive, deeply understanding. They had been married 3 years, their union born of genuine love, unshaken by the gulf of status and wealth that separated their origins. Seeing Jessica by the mirror, Nathan's expression softened instantly into a tender smile. "That dress looks beautiful," he said warmly, stepping closer to rest a hand on her waist. His gaze lingered on her reflection. "But then again, you look beautiful in anything, Jessica." She laughed softly, though a flicker of unease crossed her eyes, just enough for Nathan to notice. "What is it, love?" he asked, his tone gentler now, threaded with concern. Jessica let out a quiet sigh, her eyes fixed on the mirror's reflection of them together. "Nathan, I was just wondering, is this dress really right for tonight? I know how people dress at Spago. I don't want you to feel uncomfortable in front of your colleagues or friends because of me." Nathan understood immediately. To him, Jessica was perfect as she was, but he knew too well the unspoken pressures his world placed on her shoulders. He clasped her hand, bringing it up to kiss the back with familiar tenderness. "Listen to me, love," he said softly, his eyes holding hers with warmth and conviction. "We don't have to live by anyone else's standards, especially not ones that don't reflect who we are. I love you because you're Jessica, the woman who's genuine, humble, and kind, not because of what you wear." Her heart eased at his words. They washed over her like a fresh breeze, clearing away the fog of doubt and worry that so often shadowed her. "I know, Nathan," she whispered gratefully. "It's just, sometimes it's exhausting. Always bracing myself for the stares and the whispers. Nathan turned her gently to face him, his hand brushing her cheek with care. "I know," he said firmly. "But remember this. Your worth isn't defined by them, it's defined by you. And no matter what anyone says, I'll always be here to protect you, to love you. Always." Jessica's smile was soft, touched with peace. "I'm so lucky to have you, Nathan." His arms encircled her, drawing her close. For a long moment, they stood wrapped in quiet embrace, savoring the stillness. Then Nathan bent to whisper in her ear, "Tonight is going to be special. Just be yourself. Don't worry about a thing. I believe in you." Jessica closed her eyes, her heart lighter than it had been all day. She had no idea that only a few hours later her quiet choice of authenticity would thrust her into the center of a storm. A brutal slap, a public humiliation, and a test of both love and dignity that neither of them could have foreseen. The sleek black Bentley rolled smoothly to a stop in front of Spago Beverly Hills. A polite valet hurried over, opened the door, and Jessica stepped out, the gentle breeze of an early autumn evening brushing across her face. From the other side, Nathan emerged, circled around, and tenderly took her hand. Together, they walked toward the entrance. The moment they passed through the tall glass doors, warm golden lights bathed the restaurant, filling the space with an aura of luxury and self-importance. The air hummed with hushed conversations, soft laughter, and the delicate clinking of crystal glasses, a subtle symphony of refinement and distance. As Jessica appeared by Nathan's side, heads turned discreetly, eyes sizing her up with thinly veiled curiosity and judgment. She kept her composure, though unease crept quietly into her chest. This was not her first time at an upscale gathering. But each occasion carried the same burden: the stares, the whispers, the quiet malice. It was familiar, yet it always left her weary and suffocated. An older gentleman with white hair and a refined black suit approached them. Robert, the restaurant manager, greeted them with polished deference. "Mr. and Mrs. Williams, your usual table has been prepared," he said with a slight bow. "Thank you, Robert," Nathan replied, his hand gently resting at the small of Jessica's back as he guided her toward a small table by the window, offering a stunning view of glittering Beverly Hills streets. Jessica smoothed the fabric of her deep blue dress as she sat, grounding herself in its soft texture. Across from her, Nathan's tender gaze never left her, silently reassuring her in the midst of her tension. "You okay?" he asked softly, reaching a hand toward hers on the table. "I'm fine," Jessica answered with a small smile. "It's just, you know how this place always makes me a little uneasy." Nathan nodded knowingly, his expression filled with warmth. But just then, his phone buzzed harshly against the table. He glanced at the screen, his brow furrowing with concern. "It's Tokyo," Nathan explained, his voice edged with apology. "I'm sorry, love. This is urgent. I'll be right back." Jessica's smile was gentle, without a trace of reproach. She nodded. "It's all right. I'll wait here." Nathan leaned down, pressed a soft kiss to her forehead, then strode quickly toward a quieter corner to take the call. As soon as he left, Jessica's unease returned in force. The weight of watchful eyes pressed harder against her. She lifted her glass of water, taking a careful sip, her gaze drifting out the window in an effort to avoid their scrutiny. Across the room, Victoria Hartwell sat at a large table with two companions. From the moment Jessica had entered, Victoria's icy blue eyes had been fixed on her with keen, almost predatory interest. With her golden hair styled immaculately, a white Chanel gown hugging her slender frame, and glittering jewels sparkling under the light, Victoria looked every bit the reigning queen of Beverly Hills society. "I honestly don't understand," Victoria muttered, her voice laced with disdain, her gaze never wavering from Jessica. "Since when does Spago allow just anyone dressed so plainly to dine here?" Her friends chuckled, feeding her amusement. For Victoria, judgment was second nature, especially toward those she deemed unworthy of the world she believed belonged exclusively to her. "Look at her," Victoria continued, her tone dripping with scorn. Her eyes swept over Jessica's modest dress, obviously trying to draw attention, hoping to snare someone wealthy. "I've seen it far too many times before." She sipped her wine delicately, a dangerous glint sparking in her eyes. The decision had already crystallized in her mind. She would not let this moment pass. She would make sure everyone in the room remembered who truly ruled here. Rising to her feet, Victoria adjusted her gown with regal precision and strode confidently toward Jessica's table. A hush of curiosity followed her, nearby guests holding their breath as if anticipating a spectacle. Jessica, still gazing out at the glittering street, sensed the presence before she saw it. Turning, her eyes widened slightly as Victoria loomed over her, looking down with cold, razor-sharp disdain. "Excuse me," Victoria said smoothly, her tone polite but soaked with contempt. "It seems you've taken the wrong seat. This place isn't meant for just anyone, dear." Jessica blinked, surprised by the woman's sudden intrusion and brazen arrogance. She steadied herself, answering as calmly as she could. "I think you're mistaken. I'm exactly where I should be." Victoria let out a chilling laugh, tilting her head as one perfectly shaped brow arched in arrogant challenge. "Is that so? Then I'd very much like to know, who do you think you are, to speak with such confidence?" Jessica's heart tightened. She realized then what she had always dreaded was happening. The confrontation she had tried to avoid was already here, and there would be no escaping it. Jessica drew in a steady breath, forcing herself to remain calm beneath the cruelly triumphant stare of the woman looming over her. Victoria Hartwell's eyes never left her, the smug curve of her lips resembling a cat that had cornered a trembling mouse. Victoria tilted her head slightly, her icy blue eyes sweeping down to Jessica's modest, deep blue dress. Her expression betrayed open disdain, mingled with a twisted delight at watching her target's confidence slowly unravel. "It's truly surprising they allow someone like you in here, dressed as if you've just walked out of a bargain shop. Has Spago's standard sunk this low?" Victoria's voice was smooth, but each word landed like a dagger, crafted to pierce Jessica's pride. Jessica swallowed hard, fighting the swell of shame and hurt rising in her chest. Her eyes flickered around the room, and she saw it, every gaze fixed on her. Some whispered, others exchanged curious, judgmental looks. Her throat felt dry. Her heartbeat quickened, but she knew, now more than ever, that she could not appear weak. "I don't believe there's anything inappropriate about my attire, ma'am," Jessica replied softly, her tone laced with minimal courtesy. Victoria let out a quiet laugh, her crimson-painted lips curling in mockery. "Oh, of course not, dear. I'm sure you don't. But allow me to spell it out for you." She leaned slightly closer, her voice lowered, but pitched just enough for nearby diners to catch every word. "This isn't a fast food joint, and it's certainly not a place for women who deliberately dress down to attract attention, hoping some wealthy man will take pity." Victoria's companions, seated nearby, chuckled openly, as though savoring a cruel spectacle. The surrounding stares, probing, curious, laced with judgment, pressed down harder on Jessica, making her feel smaller, weaker, more exposed. Beneath the table, Jessica's fists clenched tightly, her nails digging into her palms as she tried to master the storm surging inside. "You're mistaken. I'm not bothering anyone. I'm simply waiting for my husband to return," she said, keeping her voice calm, even. Victoria's brows arched high, feigned surprise painted across her elegant features. "Your husband, really? How convenient that he isn't here to confirm this little story of yours. I wonder, does he actually exist? Or is he just another lie you spin to fool gullible rich men?" A louder wave of whispers rippled across the restaurant. Jessica felt her face burning, anger, humiliation, and shame colliding within her. She knew if she let herself lose control now, she would fall neatly into the trap Victoria had so carefully set. "I don't need to prove anything to you," Jessica replied, her voice firm, though her eyes betrayed the deep hurt swelling inside. Victoria leaned in slightly, her voice deceptively soft, each word dripping with derision for all to hear. "Of course you don't, but tell me, do you truly believe wearing that cheap little dress that you belong among the wealthy here? Stop lying to yourself. I saw through you the moment you walked in. You're nothing but a desperate gold digger, clinging to the charity of some rich fool to claw your way into this world." The words sliced through Jessica's heart like blades. Each syllable was sharpened, calculated to wound her in the deepest way. Her eyes burned, tears threatening to spill, but she forced herself to breathe steadily, refusing to give Victoria the satisfaction of seeing her break. "You don't know anything about me," Jessica whispered, her voice trembling now, despite her effort to hold steady. Victoria's smirk widened, triumph lighting her gaze as she caught the flicker of vulnerability. "Oh, my dear, I've seen countless women like you. All playing the same role, feigning innocence, wrapping themselves in false purity to ensnare wealthy men. And let me tell you this, everyone here knows exactly who you are and what they think of you." She swept her gaze around the room theatrically, as though inviting the crowd to share in her verdict. Jessica followed that gaze, only to find confirmation in the stares, eyes heavy with doubt, pity, and suspicion. Her chest tightened, suffocating under the crushing weight of humiliation. Her confidence cracked piece by piece beneath the scrutiny. She wanted to stand and leave, to escape this nightmare. But something deep inside anchored her, her last shred of dignity, the strength Nathan had always reminded her to hold on to. Victoria straightened, her face radiating satisfaction at Jessica's visible struggle. Looking down with an air of victory, she delivered her final, venomous blow. "You'd do well to recognize your place and leave while you can. You don't belong here." Victoria's final words cut through the air like a cold verdict, each syllable striking deeper into Jessica's already wounded pride. But this time, instead of bowing her head beneath the judgmental stares, Jessica felt something stir inside her. A small flame, flickering into a quiet but resolute fire. She drew in a deep breath and slowly lifted her head, locking eyes with Victoria's arrogant, challenging gaze. Gone was the trembling uncertainty. In its place was a strength, a determination that had long been buried but now rose to the surface. "I don't believe you have the right to decide where I do or don't belong, Mrs. Hartwell," Jessica said clearly, her voice steady and firm, loud enough for those around to hear. Victoria's brows knitted in surprise. She had not expected the young woman before her to resist. Instead of breaking, Jessica pushed back. The defiance stung her pride, leaving her both shocked and offended. "Oh, really?" Victoria sneered, masking her irritation with icy condescension. "Don't try to act noble or strong, my dear. You're only making yourself look more ridiculous." Jessica rose from her chair, standing tall, her calm dignity radiating in the tense silence of the restaurant. Every whisper had stilled. Every eye was fixed on the two women standing face to face amid the gilded decor. "I'm not trying to be anything," Jessica replied evenly, though her heart pounded violently inside her chest. "I am simply refusing to let you insult me without defending myself. I have nothing to be ashamed of, and I will not leave just because you wish it." A flash of surprise flickered in Victoria's icy stare. Never had someone she deemed beneath her dared to speak so plainly. But rather than retreat, the shock only deepened her resolve to humiliate Jessica further. "How stubborn!" Victoria said loudly. Her voice sharpened so the entire room could hear. "I was merely trying to spare you the embarrassment of pretending you belong here. Women like you, playing plain, pretending innocence to lure wealthy men, you've been exposed the moment you walked in." Whispers swelled around them again, curious eyes darting between the women, some doubtful, others pitying. But Jessica stood her ground, shoulders square, gaze unwavering. "You don't know a thing about me," Jessica said firmly, her voice ringing with clarity. "All you're doing is projecting your own prejudice onto someone you've never met, judging me by my appearance and my clothes. That is what's truly shameful." Victoria's face darkened, rage flushing across her features. Her blue eyes burned with venom as she stepped closer, her voice laced with scorn. "You dare lecture me on dignity? You, a gold digger who doesn't know her place, dare to speak to me of morals?" Jessica's hands trembled slightly at her sides, but she forced them steady, refusing to let Victoria see fear. "I say it because it's the truth. I have never used anyone for my own gain. I have done nothing wrong, and I have no reason to feel shame or to leave." "How laughable!" Victoria exclaimed, her voice rising as she laughed harshly, deliberately loud enough to draw even more attention. "We all know why you're here, to be noticed, to leech off wealthy men and escape your pitiful life." A few diners exchanged knowing whispers, pointing toward Jessica. Heat flared across her face. Humiliation, anger, pain, but she clung to her last defense, her dignity. She knew retreat meant surrender, and surrender would mean giving women like Victoria the power to trample her worth again and again. "I don't need to explain myself to you," Jessica declared, her voice strong, unyielding. "I know exactly who I am. If my presence offends you, you're free to leave. But I am not going anywhere." For the first time, Victoria faltered, standing rigid as Jessica's unwavering tone struck like a blow. Never before had she failed to crush someone she sought to humiliate. Jessica's resistance felt like a slap across her own pride. Her fury surged, cold and venomous. Stepping in even closer, her gaze sharp enough to cut, Victoria hissed, "You'll regret this arrogance. I'll make sure you suffer the deepest humiliation of your life tonight." Jessica didn't flinch. She met the threat head-on, her gaze steady, her posture unbroken. She knew this was the moment she had to stand strongest, to defend her dignity, her pride, and the truth of who she was against prejudice and cruelty laid bare before the world. Victoria's cold threats still hung in the air, like a blade suspended above Jessica's head. Silence swallowed Spago Beverly Hills, every eye locked on the two women facing each other like sworn enemies unwilling to yield. Victoria, who had never before suffered such a blow to her pride, felt her blood surge to her temples. Her icy blue eyes now burned with fury, her ego deeply wounded by Jessica's unexpected defiance. To Victoria, Jessica was no longer a harmless outsider. She had become a threat, someone she considered beneath her, yet bold enough to challenge her authority and the dominance she believed was hers alone. Unable to restrain her rage a second longer, Victoria lashed out. Without thought, without hesitation, she raised her hand and struck Jessica with all the venom and disdain she carried inside. The sharp crack echoed like a gunshot through the hushed dining hall. The entire restaurant froze. Every patron stunned into silence, their faces etched with shock at the unthinkable scene unfolding before them. Jessica felt the searing sting spread across her cheek, as though a bolt of electricity had shot through her entire body. For a moment, time itself seemed suspended. She heard every gasp of horror around her, saw the disbelief and pity reflected in strangers' widened eyes. Victoria stood panting, satisfaction curling her lips as she took in Jessica's stunned expression. She believed the slap had broken her, that Jessica would now bow her head, humiliated, and flee the restaurant in disgrace. But Jessica did not cry. She did not cower. Slowly, she lifted a hand to her burning cheek, her eyes wide but steady, fixing on Victoria with a calm, piercing gaze. It carried hurt, yes, but also disappointment, strength, and defiance. Even in her pain, Jessica refused to give her tormentor the triumph of seeing her broken. Around them, the other diners remained frozen, though several discreetly pulled out their phones to record the shocking confrontation. Whispers spread like wildfire, yet no one dared to step forward. The tension in the air was thick enough to choke on. And then, the restaurant doors flew open. Nathan stormed inside, his face tight with concern, having cut short his call the moment he sensed something was wrong. His sharp eyes immediately took in the scene. Jessica standing silently, her left cheek flushed red with the imprint of a hand, and Victoria, still postured aggressively, her eyes gleaming with anger and arrogance. The room seemed to shift at his arrival. Every head turned, the atmosphere electrified with anticipation. Nathan strode forward, his footsteps ringing with authority, each one carrying the weight of his fury. He came to Jessica's side, his hand settling firmly but tenderly on her shoulder, his gaze lingering on her face with fierce protectiveness. Then, slowly, he turned. His eyes locked on Victoria with an intensity that could cut steel. She froze, caught off guard by the sudden change of power in the room. His voice came low but thunderous, vibrating through the silence. "You just struck my wife, didn't you?" Only then did realization slam into Victoria. Her wide blue eyes blinked in disbelief as the truth crashed over her. This was Nathan Williams, the young billionaire, the tech magnate she had admired from afar, whose influence stretched across the city, and the woman she had mocked, insulted, and slapped in front of everyone was his wife. The bitter irony suffocated her. Everything she thought she controlled had flipped against her in a single instant. Her breath quickened, her composure crumbling as panic set in. She, the untouchable queen of Beverly Hills society, had made a catastrophic mistake. Nathan's glare didn't waver. His anger burned cold, calculated, restrained, but deadly. He didn't need to shout. That one question alone was enough to make clear the gravity of what Victoria, and everyone in the room, was about to face. Whispers erupted again, louder now, rippling through the restaurant like a storm. Everyone knew the confrontation had only just begun. Jessica stood close to Nathan, her hand still resting lightly on her cheek, but now her eyes no longer shone only with pain. They carried strength, pride, relief, because at the moment she needed him most, the man she loved stood beside her, not only as her husband, but as her protector. The moment Nathan's words cut through the air, cold and unyielding, the entire restaurant seemed to freeze in place. Victoria stood paralyzed, her wide blue eyes brimming with horror as she realized the powerful man before her was none other than Nathan Williams, young billionaire, famed founder and CEO of Nexus Corp, one of America's leading tech empires. Inside Victoria's mind, everything crumbled piece by piece. The authority and social power she had always wielded with pride now twisted into cruel irony, mocking her. She had made the gravest mistake of her life, targeting a woman she never imagined she would have to answer for. Nathan slid an arm protectively around Jessica's shoulders, pulling her close. His gaze never left Victoria, sharp as a blade, cold as steel, simmering with restrained fury. She felt suffocated beneath it. "Yes," Nathan declared, his deep, commanding voice echoing through the silent hall. "I am Nathan Williams, and the woman you just struck so viciously in front of everyone here is my wife, Jessica Williams." Gasps erupted across the restaurant, whispers breaking into shocked murmurs. Faces turned toward Jessica, their expressions shifting, no longer skeptical or pitying, but awed, regretful even, for having sat by in silence while she endured humiliation. Victoria's heart seemed to stop. Her blood ran cold. What she had thought a fleeting act of rage was no longer a petty outburst. It was a catastrophic misstep, one that could shatter her reputation and her place in society. Her arrogance had betrayed her, pushing her into a nightmare she could not escape. I didn't know. I had no idea who she was," Victoria stammered, her voice trembling, her once commanding presence dissolving into fragility. Nathan's eyes remained locked on her, merciless. "So you mean to say, had you known who she was, you wouldn't have struck her? In other words, you only respect people for their status and wealth. And if they're ordinary, you think you can insult and degrade them freely, just as you did moments ago." Victoria opened her mouth, but no words came. Her throat tightened with fear, humiliation choking her silent. She knew she had crossed a line that could not be undone. This was only the beginning of her downfall. Nathan's gaze swept the restaurant, finally settling on Robert, the manager, who stood pale and frozen in the corner. His voice cut like ice. "And you, Robert. As the manager of an establishment as prestigious as Spago, what exactly did you do while my wife was publicly humiliated and assaulted under your watch?" Robert jolted, stumbling forward with frantic bows. "Mr. Williams, I am deeply sorry. I failed to react in time. I take full responsibility for this grave mistake." Nathan shook his head, his tone even harsher. "You're right. It is unacceptable. Your duty is to ensure every guest's safety and dignity. But today, you failed, shamefully. A woman was publicly degraded, struck across the face in your restaurant, and you stood idle while it happened." His words fell like lashes, striking not only Robert but every staff member present. Robert bowed his head in silence, unable to respond, shame etched into every line of his face. The other diners exchanged uneasy glances, guilt washing over them for having done nothing when they should have spoken up. Nathan's eyes cut back to Victoria, hard as iron. "And as for you, Mrs. Hartwell, you will be held accountable before the law and the public for your assault on my wife. I will make certain you face the consequences of your actions." His words hit her like hammer blows. Victoria's knees nearly buckled. She staggered, reaching blindly for the back of a chair to steady herself, her hand trembling violently. Please forgive me. I was wrong," she begged, her voice breaking, stripped of the arrogance and superiority that once defined her. Nathan said nothing more to her. Instead, he turned to Jessica, his tone softening, his anger replaced by tenderness. Leaning close, he whispered, "Are you all right, Jessica? Don't worry. I'll protect you. No one has the right to treat you this way." Jessica nodded gently, her eyes glistening with gratitude and love as she gazed at him. In that moment, she understood more clearly than ever. She had never been alone in standing against cruelty and prejudice, and everyone in that restaurant realized the truth as well. Since the moment Nathan had arrived, the balance of power had shifted completely. The weight of consequence no longer fell on Jessica, but on the one who had wronged her, Victoria Hartwell. In the tense silence that hung over the restaurant, Nathan turned to Jessica. His gaze was warm, tender, carrying the weight of love and sincerity, as though he could soothe the wounds his wife had just endured. He drew a quiet breath, stepped forward, and clasped Jessica's hand tightly in his own. Then, facing the crowd, he chose to do something he had never done before. Share something deeply personal and profoundly moving about the woman he loved most. "I believe everyone here needs to hear this story," Nathan began, his voice strong, steady, yet charged with emotion. The words instantly commanded the attention of every person in the room. His eyes swept across the diners before resting on Victoria, still trembling with shame and fear. He held her gaze briefly, cold and unflinching, before continuing. "Jessica, my wife, was born into a poor family in Detroit. Her father passed away when she was just 8 years old, leaving her mother to raise 3 children alone. Jessica's childhood was anything but easy. Every day, she watched her mother work from dawn until late at night, just to put food on the table and keep her children in school." Jessica lowered her head, her eyes shimmering with tears as the memories came rushing back. Days of struggle, but also of boundless love. She felt Nathan's hand squeeze hers more firmly, grounding her, reminding her that her past was nothing to hide, but something to honor. Nathan's voice deepened, resonant with pride. Jessica never once complained. She never let hardship defeat her. By the time she was just 14, she was already working nights at a small diner to help her family. She spent every spare moment caring for her siblings and supporting her mother. And yet, no matter how difficult things were, she never lost sight of her dream, to study hard, to build a better life through her own effort and determination. His words spread like sparks of fire through the crowd, shifting the atmosphere. The uneasy whispers gave way to stillness, then to something else. Respect, admiration, a quiet awe. Nathan glanced at Jessica, his voice softening with affection. After years of relentless effort, Jessica earned a full scholarship to Wayne State University. During her 4 years there, she not only supported herself, but continued helping her family by working part-time jobs at a library and bookstore. She graduated with honors in education, dedicating her life to helping underprivileged children, children like the girl she once was. Around them, murmurs of admiration rose, this time genuine. Guests looked at Jessica with transformed eyes, no longer doubtful or pitying, but filled with reverence for the strength and grace she embodied. Nathan's gaze returned to Victoria, his words cutting like glass. "Jessica has never taken advantage of anyone. She has never sought shortcuts or easy favors. When I first met her, she didn't even know who I was. It was at a charity event for disadvantaged kids. I watched her teach and share her story with them, with humility and compassion. That was the moment I fell in love with her. Not because of money, not because of appearances, but because of her heart, her honesty, and her dignity. Our love is not built on wealth or status. It's built on truth, empathy, and the kind of love you, Mrs. Hartwell, could never begin to understand." Victoria's head bowed, her body trembling, utterly stripped of arrogance. Even her companions, who had laughed at Jessica earlier, now sat in silence, their faces etched with disappointment and disapproval. Nathan turned back to the room, his voice carrying conviction. Jessica has always chosen simplicity, always stayed true to who she is. I've told her again and again, never change for this world, no matter how cruel it can be. And today I am prouder of her than ever, because she faced prejudice and humiliation, and she overcame it with nothing but strength, courage, and grace. Gentle, heartfelt applause broke out among the diners. One by one, it swelled into a chorus, echoing through the restaurant. Some guests even wiped tears from their eyes, moved by the story of resilience and love laid bare before them. Jessica looked up at Nathan, her eyes now dry, glowing with pride and deep affection. Nathan leaned down and pressed a tender kiss to her forehead, a promise written in that simple gesture. From this moment forward, nothing would ever touch her without him standing in her defense. The tables had turned completely. Jessica was no longer the ridiculed outsider. She had become a symbol of dignity, resilience, and love so genuine it left the entire restaurant in awe. The restaurant was still steeped in emotion after Nathan's powerful and moving words. Jessica stood quietly at her husband's side, feeling the warmth of admiration and respect radiating from the people around her. Yet inside her, a flame was stirring, burning brighter with each passing second. She knew she could not remain silent any longer. This was her moment, her chance to reclaim her voice, the voice she had kept buried for far too long. Gently slipping her hand from Nathan's, Jessica drew in a deep breath to steady herself. She stepped forward, facing Victoria directly. The woman sat bowed, drowning in shame and despair. Jessica's voice rose, soft but resolute, carrying through the hushed dining room where every ear strained to catch each word. "Mrs. Hartwell," Jessica began, her gaze unwavering, "what you did to me wasn't just a slap. It was a symbol of the racism and injustice I have faced all my life." Victoria lifted her head, her eyes wide and unsettled, unable to escape the strength and clarity in Jessica's expression. Her words, though calm, cut like blades, not to wound, but to awaken the conscience of everyone present. Jessica continued, her tone measured yet forceful. "From the time I was a child, I've lived under the weight of suspicious looks and condescending stares, judged simply for the color of my skin. I've had to work twice as hard as others just to prove myself worthy of the basic respect everyone deserves. Every time I enter a place like this, I brace myself for the whispers, the judgment, the insults, just like the one you hurled at me tonight." Around the room, diners shifted uncomfortably. Admiration for her courage mixed with guilt. They recognized themselves in the silence that had allowed her humiliation to unfold unchecked. Jessica's eyes softened slightly as she swept her gaze across the restaurant, but her voice rang with steady conviction. "But tonight I refuse to be silent. I speak not only for myself, but for the countless men, women, and children like me, those who live daily with injustice and disdain, simply because they are different or less fortunate." Victoria's body trembled, her hands curling tightly as though trying to hold on to what little pride remained. "I don't hate you, Mrs. Hartwell," Jessica said, her voice gentler now, carrying unexpected compassion. "In truth, I pity you. You've lived so long in wealth and privilege that you've forgotten something essential. Human dignity cannot be measured in money or status. Deep down, I believe there is still kindness within you, but it's been buried under arrogance and prejudice for far too long." Her voice lowered, but every word was clear. "If you are truly sorry, then know this: an apology isn't enough. You must learn what people like me endure every day. You must see it, feel it, and understand the pain that prejudice inflicts." Victoria's eyes filled with tears, the first cracks of remorse breaking through her polished mask. Jessica's voice grew firm again, decisive. "I ask that you make amends by volunteering at the education centers for underprivileged children, places where I've dedicated much of my life. Go there. Witness their struggles, their courage, their fight just to earn a chance at an education and a better future. Only then will you truly understand. Only then can you change." Victoria said nothing. Her shoulders trembled, tears now spilling freely down a face once hardened with pride. All around, diners nodded, some softly applauding. Others moved to tears themselves, touched by Jessica's strength and grace. Jessica stood tall, her voice reclaimed in full, radiating dignity. She was no longer a victim of insult or prejudice. She was a woman transformed, an inspiration, a beacon of resilience and worth. She turned toward Nathan. Their eyes met, glowing with tenderness and trust. He nodded proudly, a smile full of love and reverence for the woman by his side. And in that moment, Jessica knew. She had not only defeated prejudice and cruelty, but she had also rediscovered her own voice, stronger and truer than it had ever been. Tears of contrition still wet on Victoria's face had left the entire restaurant wrapped in powerful emotion. Everyone believed she was truly repentant after Jessica's raw and heartfelt words. But just as it seemed the storm had settled, a small sound shattered the silence. Her phone buzzed lightly on the table, a faint beep, but enough to draw her attention. Startled, as if waking from a nightmare, Victoria snatched it up and glanced at the message. In an instant, the remorse vanished. Her eyes hardened, glacial blue once more, glittering with calculation and venom. The cold smirk returned to her lips, erasing all traces of contrition as though it had never been. Suddenly, Victoria straightened, tossing her hair back with a defiant flick, her gaze locking on Jessica with renewed hatred and contempt. The restaurant collectively stiffened, shocked at her terrifying shift in demeanor. "I'm honestly astonished that everyone here fell for your pitiful little performance, Jessica," she sneered, her voice loud and venomous, flooding the room with tension again. Jessica froze, confusion washing over her. Victoria's words struck like an unseen blow. Not pausing for breath, Victoria pressed on, her tone sharp and mocking. "You really are quite the actress. I'll admit, I almost believed your sob story. Poverty, struggle, all that inspiring nonsense. But unfortunately for you, I'm not so easily fooled." Nathan immediately stepped forward, his voice firm and burning with anger. "What are you trying to pull now, Victoria? Enough with your lies. This ends here." But Victoria only laughed, unshaken by his fury. "Oh, dear Nathan, I don't think you know your wife as well as you think you do. I just received a message from a very reliable source, and it proves everything she said tonight, every word, was nothing but a fabrication." She raised her phone like a weapon, as though the device itself carried the power to shatter Jessica's reputation completely. Jessica's heart skipped a beat. Her chest constricted as the venomous accusations poured out. The pain felt like old wounds torn wide open again. "You expect us to believe," Victoria continued, her voice dripping with poison, "that some poor girl from Detroit just happened to stumble into the life of a billionaire? No, Jessica, you orchestrated this from the very beginning. You knew exactly who Nathan was the moment you approached him. Every act, the plain dresses, the humility, the fake kindness, it was all calculated. You wanted his fortune. That's the only reason you're standing here now." The whispers returned like a rising tide. Suspicion spreading among the onlookers, their stares colder now, their doubt pressing in like a suffocating fog. Jessica stood trembling, her breath shallow. Though she knew the accusations were lies, their venom seeped into her deepest fears. For the first time in years, she doubted herself. Her vision blurred with tears as Victoria's words cut like sharpened knives across scars that had never fully healed. Nathan immediately gripped her hand tightly, fury etched into his face. His eyes burned with rage, but also with worry for the woman he loved. "Enough, Victoria!" His voice thundered, low and commanding. "Your vile lies will never destroy the truth, or the love Jessica and I share." Victoria shrugged, her smile malicious. "I'm not lying, Nathan. Someone's already done the digging. Her whole past, every move, was designed to exploit you. Tell me, are you sure she loves you? Or does she only love the number in your bank account?" Jessica's body trembled as the cruel words crashed down on her like a storm. She staggered back a step, her eyes filling with tears, her shoulders shaking. "No, I never," she whispered, her voice breaking, tears spilling freely now. For the first time, she felt her lifelong fight unraveling under the weight of doubt, as if everything she had built inside herself was collapsing with a few malicious words. Nathan wrapped an arm around her protectively, his jaw clenched tight, his eyes glinting with steely resolve. He turned to Victoria, his voice sharp and deadly calm. "You will pay for this slander, Victoria. Every word you've just spoken, you will answer for it. I promise you that." Victoria only tilted her chin higher, her smirk curling with malice. "Oh, Nathan, the game is only beginning." And in that instant, the battle everyone thought was over ignited once more. Fiercer, darker, and more merciless than ever. Jessica stood frozen, as if turned to stone, Victoria's cruel words echoing mercilessly in her mind. Each syllable cut like a blade, slicing through the defenses she had spent years carefully building. She felt as though she were falling, helpless, spiraling into a dark, bottomless abyss. Her eyes lifted, darting around the room. She saw the stairs, curious, suspicious, cutting straight through her, sharp enough to steal her breath away. And in that moment, Jessica understood. No matter how hard she tried, no matter how genuine she was, there would always be people like Victoria. People ready to question her motives, to accuse, to condemn her simply because she had not been born into their world of wealth and privilege. Fear and despair surged through her chest like a wave, nearly buckling her knees. Her heart clenched in pain as old doubts came rushing back stronger than ever. I don't know anymore," Jessica whispered, her trembling voice barely audible. Her tear-filled eyes turned to Nathan, carrying helplessness and despair. "Nathan, maybe Victoria's right. Maybe I don't belong in this world. Maybe I was wrong from the very beginning to step into your life." The words struck Nathan like a physical blow. He rushed to her side, his hands gripping her shoulders tightly as though to keep her from collapsing. "Jessica, don't say that," he pleaded, his voice breaking with pain. "You are the most incredible woman I've ever met. I love you for who you are, for your honesty, your kindness, not for anything else. Victoria's words are nothing but lies and cruelty. You can't let them destroy you." But Jessica shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. Her voice was weary, fractured with exhaustion. "You don't understand, Nathan. I've spent years trying to prove I deserve to stand beside you, to be loved and respected. But no matter how hard I fight, there will always be people like her. People who see me as nothing more than a gold digger. I'm so tired, Nathan. I don't have the strength to keep fighting anymore. Nathan's heart shattered. Each word from her lips pierced deeper into him, leaving him raw with anguish. He pulled her into his arms, whispering desperately against her ear, "Jessica, please don't give up. Trust me. We can get through this together. I can't lose you, not to lies, not to cruelty." But Jessica stood still in his embrace, drowning in the chaos of her own emotions. Did Nathan truly understand what she endured? Could he ever feel the weight of suspicion and disdain she had carried all her life? She glanced again at the crowd, faces that held pity, curiosity, and even silent agreement with Victoria's accusations. The sight hollowed her further. This glittering world, this place of wealth and harsh judgment, was there ever truly a place for her in it? Her voice shook as she spoke again, raw and broken for the first time before them all. "Maybe I was wrong to think I could belong here. Maybe I was naive to believe love alone could erase prejudice and distance. Victoria's right, I don't belong. I never truly belonged." At those words, Victoria's lips curved into a triumphant sneer. She stood tall, savoring her victory. "So, you finally admit it, Jessica. I told you from the very start, you don't deserve a man like Nathan. Sooner or later, the truth always comes out." Her venomous words crushed Jessica further. She stepped back slightly, her tear-filled gaze locking on Nathan's, her face etched with despair. "Nathan, I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice faint, drained of all strength. "I never wanted to hurt you, but maybe the best thing is for me to let go. Maybe I have to accept I'll never belong in this world, no matter how hard I try." Nathan's chest tightened, as though an iron fist had gripped his heart. Pain and fear flared in his eyes as he clutched desperately at her hand. "Jessica, no. You can't give up like this. Think of everything we've been through together. I love you. I can't live without you. Please, please don't leave me." Jessica looked at him, her heart breaking at the raw anguish in his face. But the weight of her wounds, her self-doubt, her exhaustion was unbearable. She lowered her head, tears falling silently to the floor. "I'm sorry, Nathan," she whispered, her voice so faint it was almost lost to the air. "I don't know what to do anymore. I just don't know." In that moment, Jessica's world collapsed completely. She stood there, swallowed by despair, her faith in herself shattered, her hope extinguished, lost in the crushing darkness of her own broken spirit. Just as Jessica seemed ready to collapse completely, her tears of despair still falling silently, a warm, steady voice suddenly broke through the suffocating silence of the restaurant. "Forgive me for intruding on something so personal." An older gentleman rose slowly from a table near the window. His face was lined with the deep creases of time, but his kind blue eyes still shone with wisdom. He stood with quiet dignity, his presence gentle yet commanding, impossible to ignore. "My name is William Anderson," he continued, his voice calm, resonant, carrying both warmth and authority. "And I cannot remain silent any longer after witnessing what has unfolded here tonight." Jessica and Nathan turned toward him, surprised but curious. Victoria, however, scowled, her irritation clear at the sudden interruption. William's eyes fell on Jessica. They were soft, compassionate, but searching, as though he could see straight into her pain. His voice gentled. "My dear, I know the weight you carry right now, the doubt, the helplessness, the feeling of being lost in a world that too often judges harshly. But do you know what the most dangerous thing you are losing at this very moment is?" Jessica stood speechless, her wide, tearful eyes locked on this stranger who spoke as though he had known her all her life. "It is your faith in yourself," William said, his words sinking deep into every heart in the room. "Your faith in the love you and Nathan share. You must not let the cruel and baseless words of another destroy something so sacred, so rare." He turned to Nathan then, his gaze firm yet filled with empathy. "Young man, I saw the way you stood by her, the way you protected her. That is love in its truest form, something that can never be faked or bought. Do not let cruelty and lies shake what the two of you have built together." Nathan squeezed Jessica's hand tighter, his eyes fixed on William, drinking in every word. William's voice hardened slightly as he turned to Victoria. "And you, Mrs. Hartwell, can you not see that your actions reveal not only cruelty toward others, but also the deep emptiness within yourself? Words as venomous as yours wound others, yes, but they also betray the hollowness of the heart that speaks them." For the first time, Victoria faltered. She seemed caught off guard, unable to summon a ready reply to the man's calm but unyielding rebuke. William turned back to Jessica, his voice softening once more, his eyes radiating warmth. "My dear, I have been married to my wife for 50 years. We've weathered storms, doubts, heartbreak. And what I have learned is this: in true love and marriage, what matters most is not how the world looks at you, but how you choose, again and again, to stay, to protect, and to love one another, no matter what comes." Jessica's heart stirred, his words pouring into her like fresh rain over parched earth. For the first time that evening, something inside her began to heal. "Life will always be full of prejudice and obstacles," William continued, his tone gentle but unwavering. "But if you let those prejudices decide your happiness and your worth, then you've surrendered before the battle even begins. Never doubt your true value because of someone else's ignorance or malice." Jessica nodded faintly, tears still falling, but now they were tears of clarity, of renewal. William's final words rang clear and strong. "True love is never easy, but it is always worth the fight. If you truly love each other, don't let anyone or anything break what you hold." When he finished, silence lingered for a long moment. Then slowly, the restaurant filled with applause, gentle, heartfelt, a chorus of genuine admiration for the wisdom they had just witnessed. Nathan turned to Jessica, his eyes shining with love and hope. "He's right, Jessica. Our love is worth the fight. And I will never let lies take you away from me." Jessica gazed back into his eyes, and for the first time in years she felt a clarity she had long lost. William's words had restored the one thing she almost surrendered, her faith in herself, and in the love Nathan had always given her. "I believe you, Nathan," she whispered, her voice quiet but firm, "and I will never let anyone's cruelty break us again." Nathan drew her into his arms, holding her tightly, as though reclaiming something priceless that he had feared slipping away. They stood there in silence, together, stronger than before, recognizing at last what truly mattered. And Jessica knew, sometimes it is the words of a complete stranger that carry the greatest power to save, to heal, and to remind us of the strength we already carry within. In the moment, Jessica leaned into Nathan's embrace, listening to the heartfelt applause filling the restaurant after William Anderson's wise words. A fierce determination ignited inside her. The doubts, the fear, the sense of not belonging, all of it began to fade, replaced by faith and strength, renewed by true love and the guidance she had just received. She slowly straightened her posture, her eyes gleaming with confidence and courage. Fixing her gaze on Victoria, who now trembled with fear and tension, realizing the moment of truth had arrived, Jessica spoke with calm but unshakable strength. "Victoria," Jessica's voice rang out, clear and resolute. I once allowed your venom and prejudice to make me doubt myself. But now I know that true strength lies in choosing to believe in my love, in my dignity, and not in letting someone else's narrow-mindedness destroy the good in my life. Victoria stood pale and silent, her hands trembling, her malicious schemes crumbling before her eyes. Hatred still burned in her stare, but behind it was unmistakable desperation. Jessica went on, her words carrying through the restaurant like a declaration. Nathan and I will never allow prejudice or judgment, from you or from anyone, to break our happiness. I will stand by the man I love, not because of wealth or power, but because we belong together. And that is what truly matters. Nathan stepped forward, wrapping a steady arm around Jessica's waist, his eyes blazing with pride and love. He turned to Victoria, his voice cold and commanding. As for you, Victoria, I've decided Nexus Corp will terminate its multi-million-dollar contract with your husband's company. I will never conduct business with people who trample on human dignity and use power to belittle others. The words fell like a gavel strike. Gasps rippled across the room as Victoria staggered, her face drained of all color, her breathing ragged, her knees nearly giving way. You can't do this, she screamed, panic in her voice. That contract is everything. Without it, my husband's company will collapse. We'll lose everything. Nathan's gaze remained ice-cold. You should have thought about the consequences before you acted with cruelty and arrogance. You didn't just harm my wife. You revealed your own moral bankruptcy, and now you will pay the price. At that moment, the doors opened and two uniformed police officers entered briskly. They walked straight toward Victoria. One officer's voice rang out, Mrs. Victoria Hartwell, you are under arrest for assault and public disturbance. Please come with us to assist in the investigation. Victoria cried out, struggling weakly, but the officers quickly restrained her. Under the piercing, condemning stares of everyone present, she was led out of the restaurant. At last, she would face the consequences of her cruelty. Jessica watched, not with glee, but with calm relief. She turned to Nathan, her eyes shimmering with gratitude. He held her gently, whispering, Jessica, from this moment on I will always be here, to protect you, to love you. We will face every trial together. Jessica met his gaze, smiling with renewed trust. I know, Nathan, I'll never let anyone or anything shake my faith in us again. Thank you for never letting go of me. They stood there in each other's arms, realizing more than ever that true happiness was never in the judgment of others. It was in the love and trust they shared. The stormy night finally came to an end. Jessica and Nathan left the restaurant together, heads held high, admired and respected by all who watched them go. They knew now, with absolute certainty, that true love could not be broken by prejudice, cruelty, or malice. It was stronger than all of that. In the days that followed, the fallout from Victoria's actions spread quickly. Her husband's company plunged into financial crisis without Nexus Corp's contract, forcing the Hartwells to sell off assets and endure the scorn of the very high society they once ruled. Victoria herself faced the law, standing trial for her reckless behavior. Meanwhile, Jessica and Nathan carried on, stronger and more united than ever. They understood now that no matter the trials life threw at them, as long as they believed in their love and their worth, nothing could take away their happiness. In the end, Jessica and Nathan triumphed, not just over prejudice, but over fear and doubt, protecting the truth of their love. Life will always bring challenges, but if you believe in yourself and in true love, you will overcome. What do you think of Jessica's powerful choice to stand up for her love and her dignity? Have you ever had to fight against prejudice to protect your relationship? Share your story in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share this video to spread its message, and subscribe to the channel for more heartfelt and inspiring stories. Thank you for watching. See you again in the next moving story.